Welcome to the Fire Bay, the podcast where we dive into the heart of the fire service, community engagement, and the stories that keep our world safe. Join Colton every week as he brings you behind the scenes, discuss the issues that matter most to firefighters, share personal stories, and explore ways we can all make a difference in our communities. Whether you're a firefighter, supporter, or just someone who cares about public safety, you're in the right place. This is the Fire Bay.
Welcome back to the Fire Bay. I am Colton Young, your host, and today is a very special episode. I got a good friend of mine, Mr. Jason Eubanks, who is a 24-year member of the Nashville Fire, who was promoted to district chief in 2022, and also the founder of First Alarm Fire Training, a new company focused on preparing firefighters for success on the job. And today we're going to dive into Jason's journey, his leadership, and the mission behind First Alarm Fire Training. So first and foremost, welcome, Jason.
Hey, thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just kind of jump back to where it all began. So Jason, take us back 24 years ago when you raised your hand and said, I want to be a firefighter. Kind of tell me what your thought process, did you have anybody in the fire service before, or was this something new that you just saw out one day and was like, hey, I want to do that?
Well, it actually, we'll kind of start back before 24 years ago, if that's okay with you. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
as a young man, that was all I ever did, man. Grew up hanging around the firehouse, going on calls, riding when it was quote unquote legal at the time, sign waivers and do that stuff. And man, it's just all I ever wanted to do. The good Lord put a drive in me to want to do this for a living. I am more than blessed that he lets me do it every day. So when I tell people that I'm living the dream, I'm truly living the dream because that was all I ever knew, all I ever wanted to do. So yeah, so 24 years ago, I was blessed with opportunity, got hired in the Nashville Fire Department. We started our recruit school was in July of 2001, and we finished up in 2 months. We were the first class that they hired where if you already had your EMT, we didn't have to go through EMT school. So we only did fire school and then we came out. And you hate to say, you remember that week for a lot of reasons, good and bad. Our final week in the fire academy was the week of 9/11. That happened on Tuesday and we got out that Friday. So as we were coming out, man, you want to talk about really kind of get hit in the face with what you're stepping into and what you're fixing to do. And, all them years of me hanging around the firehouse and riding and all that, that's just, you kind of see what it is. But obviously it's a huge difference when now you're the guy, right? You're the guy riding on the rig, you're doing the job, and you get to do everything that you grew up watching those guys do that you wanted to be. So excited that week to come out. And then again, that same thing of like, wow, man, this is something, because of the world changed that day, especially in the fire service. The fire service changed dramatically after that event. And anybody that's come on after that knows that. So yeah, man, there was a lot of emotions coming out and getting out into the companies, but to say I was excited is, don't really do it justice, because I was.
Right. And, one of the biggest things that happened out of 9/11, not only did we lose 343 firefighters, but it also brought so many people into the fire service because they had that, feeling of, man, these men and women gave their all.
That's right.
And it just, unfortunately, it was a great recruiting tool as well to get people into the service.
Yeah, it was. It was. And and especially up there, you've seen just story after story after story over the years up there of guys who were just kids when that happened, and they're following the footsteps of their fathers up there, which is just, to me, that's just tremendous, man. It's just, that's an awesome thing. And it's super sad that it had to go that way, but to see them following in that footstep, knowing what happened up there, man, it's just awesome. And I think that's one of them things that just speaks volumes for what the fire service is all about.
And that was, I think, too, a big thing where we learned about all the exposure stuff as well. You know, we're still having
Correct.
members that are exposed to the cancerous items that were a part of that. So, um, tell me something. You know, what was one of the big things? You know, you talked about remembering 9/11 coming out of the fire academy, but what was one of the big things? Something that you learned from one of the instructors that has stuck with you all this time in your career? Was there anything that you can remember?
Man, just the really trying to think because it was such a short time, and the instructors back then they were just they were the old head guys, right? And it was a kind of a different breed of men that taught us as far as they came from a time that I couldn't relate to. We couldn't,
Mm,
and so just to hear them stories when you're out on the drill ground of them telling about how they handle business, and man, here we are, we're trying to do that to not let them down. When they would just kind of, hey man, this is the real deal. When y'all leave here, you're the guy. And so that kind of hits you kind of hard, like you say, when you do come out. And so that's something, and not to get too far ahead of things, that's something I have told people throughout my career, especially if I've ever had a rookie assigned to me. Hey, now you're here. You're not in the academy. When we roll up today, those people don't know that this is your first week or two. All they know is they've called 911 and now you're here to help them. So you got to take that serious and do everything you can to be ready and prepared for that.
absolutely. So you were promoted 2022 to district chief.
Yes.
What was your position before that? I know every fire department runs things a little different. Nashville,
Yeah,
y'all
so
have
I can
captains.
I can kind of give you the rundown all the way if you'd like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I made engineer right at 10 years on. I could have tested before then, but man, I was in a very good place in the city where we made a pretty good bit of fire, and man, I wanted to ride the back as long as I could. But so at 10 years I made engineer. At 15 I made captain. And then in 21 years is when I made chief. So I've come up through the ranks and I wanted to do every position. Again, I was blessed. I didn't want to be an engineer for a super long time just because I still like to go in, get in the fire and get with it. But we all understand how that works. But
Hmm.
I loved my time as an engineer. I loved it. And it opens your eyes. And I think it helps lay that foundation to move up. And I know super good officers who were not engineers. I don't knock people that don't do it. It was just something I wanted to do. I wanted to take every step on my way up to truly understand each position because when things go down on the fire ground, they're coming to you as the captain or the chief. Hey, chief, we've got a problem. What do you want us to do? Well, you got to have an idea of how to fix that problem. And that's why I'm a fan of hitting every step on your way up.
That brings up a good point. What is the biggest shift in mindset when you go from riding the rig to commanding multiple companies? Like, when you're a captain, if you're first new captain, you set up a command until a
Yeah.
district chief or whatever gets there. What's the biggest mindset that you could, talk to someone about?
Well, the biggest mindset is that change of as a captain, you do not have tunnel vision. You still are looking at the big picture, but it's almost like that doubles when you go from captain to chief because as a captain, and this is my opinion, as a captain, yeah, you're going to have command for a minute. You got to kind of set the tone and get the wheels turning. But once your chief officer gets there and relieves you of command, then you are task oriented.
Mhm.
And so as the chief officer, you're looking at the bigger picture and you got to be thinking ahead of, hey, if we don't get on this, I got to be thinking, minutes down the road, not right now. And as a company officer, you're thinking of right now, I got to pull the line, I got to put this fire out. Right. So that's the biggest jump. And you're fortunate if you get to make a bunch of fires as a captain and get to a bunch of scenes, you understand how all that works. So when you do make the jump to chief, you've at least got that foundation, but there's still there's still a whole lot more. You're like, oh wow, yeah, every bit of this is now on me. And that responsibility is a huge thing.
we're getting ready to talk about your training program that you established, but before you even started all your training curriculum and stuff like that, you mentored other people coming up, and I was listening to one of your short videos the other day on Facebook, and you were talking about how there was I believe it was a captain. You were an engineer, he was a captain that you looked up to, and then you became his district chief, but still relied heavily on him for um, on stuff. What is one of your leadership philosophies when it comes to developing an officer under you? As a chief, what do you expect from your officers, and how do you help them achieve that goal?
Well, so I kind of have a belief in you let the captain be the captain. I'm not a big micromanager at all. I just don't do that. And you know, you help your captains. If you see something that you want to address, then you address it. If you see them kind of fixing itself, I kind of let it fix itself. I don't always jump right in right out of the gate. Hey, man, we need to do X, Y, Z. And then I really appreciate when they kind of start asking questions, because then that opens the door. We can sit down and have a conversation. I just don't like to jump the gun too quick. And there may be some philosophies and thoughts out there that wouldn't agree with that. I can just only speak for me and captains that have worked for me. That has worked pretty good. Because I want them to kind of learn their way. I'm not going to let them fall on their face. I guess I should say
Right.
that right out of, I'm not going to let that happen.
But
So I
sometimes you have
kind
to
of
let
let them,
people make a mistake and learn from it before just
yes,
absolutely correcting it before it even happens.
yes, because have I made mistakes? Sure have. Will I continue to make some? I sure will. And that is one of the things I caution everybody to be mindful and careful of. You start listening to the guy that, oh yeah, man, I've done it all. Hey, I've seen it all. Be respectful, but just kind of file that away if you know what I'm saying.
No, absolutely.
Because that individual can get you into some trouble. So also with that, like what you referred to in my video, this guy had been on the job way longer than me. And again, just because you get that third bugle or you get a white helmet, now your title says district chief, that does not mean you know it all. Not even close. And so I think it would be very unwise of me to not rely on those captains still on the scene. And I still do it to this day. I have the ones that I rely on strongly, and I don't have one problem asking them, hey, what do you think? And they say, hey, well, maybe we should try this. All right, let's try it. And then we'll do it. And man, and that just creates that mutual respect and working relationship where you don't have to panic or get worried on scenes because you have level headed company officers and you trust their decision making. So again, I've been very blessed with that since I've been in the role that I'm in now.
So, segueing into your company, let's talk about first the first alarm fire training company. What sparked the interest of starting this company?
So, man, it had always kind of been in my head a little bit. And then earlier this year, several of us went to a class up in Johnson City. Chief Nick Martin, who, man, I encourage everybody who doesn't follow him, watch him. You should do it. He has very good stuff that's out there. It's phenomenal. And we went to that class, and on the way back, we all kind of got to talking. And, it was just kind of thrown out there. And, a lot of the stuff that we heard in that class, we know. And somebody said, well, why can't you do that, Jason? And I just kind of looked at him and I'm like, well, I think I could and I would like to do it. Because what is the fire service about, man? It's all about sharing the knowledge that people have given you as you come up through your career, and it is our role as we get years on the job and you move up in rank or whatever, or you're the senior guy on the back seat. It is our job to teach those coming up through the fire service on what you've learned. And so one of the things that was said in that class that just really, really hit me hard was how, and referring to the state of Tennessee, where we can go get, you name it, we can go get rope, hazmat, trench, collapse, all of that stuff. Any certificate you want, we can go get it. Then he said, but where do you go get your training on command? And man, I just kind of sat back in my chair and I thought, man, he's got a point. So I will say this, and this is something in my incident command class, and this is one of the things, man. Every line of duty death in this country is tied to the NIOSH 5. And for those who don't know what that is, when NIOSH does their reports of a line of duty death, there's 5 things that are listed. And it's, lack of command, lack of accountability, improper risk assessment, poor radio communications, and the lack to follow your SOPs or SOGs. Well, every one of them are tied to firefighters dying on a scene. Okay. Well, all 5 of those are related to command. So that just hit me like, man, why don't we hammer that home? And to really get company officers, chief officers, or even your pikemen that ride the back seat that are going to be handling command, because a firefighter on the back seat could have command for several minutes before a officer gets there to take over. And we all know a whole lot of bad things happen within them first couple of minutes. So a firefighter on the back could be dealing with a mayday or something very significant that goes wrong on a fire scene. And so that just hit me. And that was when I was like, man, you know what? I just want to help do my part. None of this stuff is anything I've created, right? It's stuff I've learned and experienced through my time on the job. And now I just want to do my part to help spread the word more. It kind of took that leap of faith, to step out and say, you know what, man, I'm just going to do it. So, and it is a little nerve wracking, right? I'm just no firefighter, man. And so to do something like this and to try to get out there and want to go around and teach and help spread the word, man, I just decided to go for it. So here we are.
And I think going back to that, the mission that I'm hearing of the first law and fire training is to basically make people more accountable for what's going to happen on the scene. Everybody wants to hurry up and get the command position and be that senior person and stuff, but there's more to being a senior person or a officer than just having the title. And
100%.
it seems like the mission seems to be more of educating people on how to humbly be that position more so than just rushing to that position.
Yes, and that man, that is spot on. I like that description of it because that is what it is. And that's why I say I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm wanting to keep it. It's just basic stuff. And you don't have to get all off the rails with it and get just way over the top with it because in my head it's not. But you have to learn that again when you take that role, when 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 you're getting on the scene and you say those words, I'll be assuming command, that responsibility is just, it's a very big deal. And you have to understand what that means because it is way more than that. Oh, yeah, I get to stand here. I got the white helmet on, right? Hey, where's the chief? Oh, hey, that's me. Well, there's a ton of responsibility that comes with that. And so you really have to be squared away in your skill set, your understanding of things on the fire ground, relying on your people, knowing who your people are, and being able to put the pieces of the puzzle together the best way we know how to mitigate the scene. But more importantly, the number one thing, it is now my job as a chief officer and an incident commander to make sure that everybody leaves that scene and goes back to the firehouse so they can return home to their family when their duty shift is over. That's number one. And you got to be on your game as best you can to make sure that happens because we all know the fire service. I'll give credit to a documentary I watched years ago on It was Rescue 2 and Rescue 1. A lot of folks may know what it is. It was called Still Riding, where these crews rode with those two rescues in 2001. And it just happened to be months before 9/11 happened. But one of those guys, I believe his name was Billy Lake, they're talking to him, and he says it the best. And it's one of the best I've ever heard it said. He said, you can have um, your most experienced guys on a fire scene that know what they're doing, know how to handle business, and you feel real confident with that, but everything can go wrong. The fire ground is a very messed up place, and it's just our job to be as best prepared as we can be to handle whatever that fire ground is going to throw at you, and again, to make sure everybody goes home. That's the goal. We're fortunate to be able to get to do what we do, but that's the goal, is for everybody to go home and be able to retire and enjoy life way past this when this ride is over.
Absolutely. And another thing too that people don't always understand is, um, it also comes back to where the senior person or that officer or the incident commander, when things go bad, like, it's your job to notify the family. It's you know that's years of possible litigation that you have to sit through to make sure things were done correctly. And it's nothing to scare away incident commanders or anything like that. But again, just be careful being so eager to run and be, I'm the command, I'm this, I'm that.
It's yes, you're right. It's way more to it than just, I'm the quote unquote the boss.
Right.
There's a ton of responsibility and things that you're responsible for, and you got to take this serious. You never stop learning, and it doesn't stop just because you get the white helmet. That ain't no. It's even more so because of everything that goes on with that. So yeah, you're spot on 100%. And I can tell you this, it hit me here coming up in what, uh 2 months. I had a Mayday event, and I hadn't been a chief a full year yet, and had 4 guys fell through the floor, called a Mayday. One guy no longer works for the fire department. One was off almost a year to the day. And man, you want to talk about a gut punch. That's what I say, tell people that's when it really hits home. When you hear those words, Mayday, 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 and you're in command of that scene, I never want to experience again, and I hope nobody does. But you want to talk about hitting you pretty hard like a freight train. It did that morning.
You talked about being part of a Mayday. A couple of years ago, we were I was on duty, had just recently, uh, either I was getting ready to be promoted or just had been promoted. I think I was getting ready. I was going through the process. I was riding up as acting officer in charge.
Mm-hmm.
A neighboring department of ours was on a apartment fire, and we were listening to it. I actually had another AYC called me and said, "Hey, are you aware of what's going on in right next to your zone?" I said, "No, I hadn't listened to their radio or whatever." So I turned it on and heard them check on scene, confirm fire, apartment complex. And while we were listening to it, things started getting a little wild and stuff. And so me and the guy that was with me, I was like, "Hey, let's get in the engine. We're going to be covering their city anyways. Let's kind of move up to be more able to respond to med calls or whatever." And as we're doing that, we're pulling out of the bay and we hear Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. And my driver looked over at me and goes, "Did I hear that right?" I said, "Yes, calm
Yeah.
down. You
Yeah.
know, let they didn't call for us yet. We'll probably be going, so let's just ease that way. Um, biggest thing is stay calm." And about that time, our tones dropped, another station's tone dropped. They they called us for mutual aid for a RIT team. We were unsure of what happened. So we show up. We're the first engines there from our department. Uh, they had already gotten the firefighter out at the time, who was already rushing them off. And I show up to the incident commander and I say, "Hey, we're here. What do you need?" And he's like, "I need a RIT team." I said, "Okay, do we need to be an active RIT team or a standby RIT team?" He said, "Standby RIT team." I said, "Okay, perfect." So I had two other engines coming, two extra ambulances just because of the number of people there. And we had a shift commander coming. And man, that day like really brought to my attention just how quick something can go bad on a fire.
That's what,
And
yeah,
and it's just
100%. And you know, and we could talk for hours on this, but you know, the fire ground today is even different than when I come on, man. In my short 24 years, you just see that change in just building construction and how big a deal that is on the fire ground. And you think about the guys even before our time, they really see it, you know, now, man. You get something that's really burning, and by the time you roll up, you want to talk about compromised structures. And again, that's why things can happen so quick within those first couple minutes of somebody getting there. So yes, 100% things can change just in the blink of an eye.
so kind of transitioning away from that just a little bit, but what is one of your favorite courses that you have established for your program?
Well, right now it is the command. So the class, I call it the role of the IC. You know what the responsibilities of that are, and that's the one I have really built right now. And again, because to me it is a passion of mine, and being in the role I'm in now, I just want to help people kind of understand what it looks like, all the aspects of what goes on. Again, once you say, "Hey, I'm on the scene," I'm assuming command, because there are a bunch of things how you have to be thinking. You know, again, you got to be thinking way ahead of the game. Say you got an apartment fire and the you got a fire up on the second floor and it ain't quite reached the breezeway, but you've got heavy fire involvement. You know, again, depending on the situation, but just throwing out a hypothetical, you know, at that point, you're like, "Hey, man, we just got to stop it at the breezeway. I got to stop it right here. We've lost this half of the building. I got to be thinking about this now. This is where we're going to make our stand." And that's just one of, you know, all kinds of different scenarios. But so that's why I built it towards that, because that is one thing I wish. I do wish, and maybe some departments have it. So if I'm talking out of my lane here, then that's my fault. But I kind of wish that there was really good officer development things in place for when people get promoted, instead of, you know, you just kind of, yeah, you sit through a day of orientation of, you know, here's things you got to be thinking of, all the HR and the admin stuff. And I'm not saying that none of that is unimportant, because it is. You got to understand that. But I wish there was more practical slash scenario based stuff to go along with that, because that's what you're going to be doing. And I wish there was a more hands on approach to stuff like that. So that's what kind of got me doing this class. And if it's okay now, I will go ahead and throw this out there. I'm actually going to be doing a class in November. It's going to be held in Goodlettsville. It's going to be open to everybody. It's not just, you know, Goodlettsville Fire people. It's going to be open to everybody. I'm going to be putting out information on it. The dates appear to be November 14th and 15th. And it is that class. It's the IC class. That first day will be pretty much just lecture. I have a couple of chief officers coming in to help too. And then the second day will be like the scenario based stuff. So looking forward to doing that. We'll kind of see where that goes, but that is the plan.
Also, um, so, um, so real quick, in 5 years, where do you want to see this training company?
Man, that's a good question. I'm hoping that it's growing. In my head right now, my wheels are spinning a million miles an hour right now because I'm on the front end. And I would like this to lead to, man, anything just fire service training related, whether it's, engine ops, truck ops, more officer development, maybe even to just some leadership type stuff. That is kind of what I would like to see. Um, but I'm just trying to be very controlled right now, on the front end, and
Absolutely.
not let my thoughts outrun what can actually happen. Cause man, you know how it is. We've all still got family. We've got the two boys that we have, the grandsons here that live with us, and man, I've got baseball and football and you name it going on. And I love every second of that. I ain't missing none of that either. So, but I think, we can make it work. So, that's kind of the plan. So we'll see where it goes.
Perfect. Um, so kind of transitioning to the fire service today and advice, from your perspective, what's the biggest challenging facing firefighters in today's fire service?
Oh man, there's a lot of things and a lot of things different, with different departments. Man, like we all see, like if I'm tracking with what you're asking, like, man, we got issues with staffing, equipment. I'm very fortunate. I will give huge props to Nashville, man. They really tried to do well over the past several years on getting just tremendous equipment. We've had our bumps in the road, but here lately, man, they've done really well with that. Man, the mental health is a huge thing in the fire service, as you and I both know really well from dealing with that from a union perspective. That's a huge hurdle right now. And it's very much a very real thing. We all experience all of that stuff. So if I'm kind of tracking with what you're asking, that is a lot of the challenges I see now. I think a lot of the still positive though, man, this is still a very sought after profession. You know, I don't just call it just a job. It's a career. It's a lifestyle. And, with that, I will say this. I do think this is kind of a challenge in the fire service as a whole. I don't know that, I don't know how to really word it. I don't know that a whole lot of people come for the right reasons these days. A lot of people almost kind of like they want a t-shirt, but they don't really know what they're getting into, you know? Um,
Absolutely.
because there's no doubt about it. We see a lot of bad in this job, and it's hard work. But man, it's just to be able to do it for those who really want to do it. That's a big deal. And for those that don't, man, they're not good to have on a scene. They're just not.
Well, and another thing with that, they become a liability. If you don't want to do this job, we don't always have spots for people to stand outside. And when it comes down to it, we just talked about Maydays and stuff like that. You need everybody on that playing field to be able to get the job done should a Mayday happen. Because it
a
might
hundred
take
percent.
5 or 6 crews to be able to get someone out just due to, air consumption and stuff like that.
That's right. And it goes back to what I just told you earlier. The same thing, like with a brand new recruit, their first day on the rig. If something goes down, yeah, they're going to listen to my guidance, but they got to be ready to get in there and get with it. I understand they don't know everything, but you're going to have to get in there and we're going to have to handle business, you know? So
Absolutely. So one more thing, and then we'll kind of start wrapping it up. But what is one thing that the public doesn't always understand about firefighters that you would encourage people who, whether they support us or don't, what's one thing that you think people should understand about the fire service?
that we ain't just sitting around watching TV all day. And I
Absolutely.
say that kind of joking because I think a lot of people still think that. The majority of folks, yeah, they see us riding down the street, they think sometimes, oh yeah, look, man, that's cool. They just get to ride around that big old fire engine. I get to pay for them to do that. I get to pay for their meals. They just sit around the fire hall, have a good time, like a clubhouse. They don't understand unless something happens in their world that we show up to. and then they get it. And it's kind of sad. And I do think overall, you know, it's not a bad image per se, but there are those few people that kind of think that. And I wish they didn't, you know. I would love for people to come, you know, hey, come spend a shift with us. I don't care what fire department is. Come spend a shift with us. And then you see what we deal with rolling up on these bad scenes or dealing with a fire in this triple digit heat, you know, we've been having. And that's just what people don't understand. And again, until they see it, it's a lot like you kind of relate it to your insurance kind of in a way, right? None of us like paying for that insurance until something happens, and then we're glad we have it. So that's kind of a very cliche, very, oh yeah, that's been out there before, but it is a lot like that. And, you know, for people to get their head around that and understand it, they don't see all the birthdays and holidays and whatever big events that we miss because we are on duty. The time away from your family and some of the stresses that can create, you know, just so many things. And I could go down a rabbit hole with that, but you know what I'm saying. But that is one of the things that, you know, people that don't understand to, I don't really know how you educate them on that either, but other than just saying it on this platform, you know, that's really the only thing I know. Those are very real things that we deal with in the fire service.
And I'm sure Nashville Fire never has this issue, but when you're at a gas station or a grocery store or something, and you're getting gas or getting food for the meals or whatever, and people are like, well, why are you here? Don't you have free food and stuff like that? It's like, no, we live just like you do.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're just gone for
Uh,
24 hours.
Actually,
Or
years ago, when I was still a pipe mill in the back, I did get hit with that one time. We were in a store and we got hit with it, and luckily we were able to have a conversation with the gentleman. And man, his whole demeanor changed. He had no idea. He had no idea, and he was super cool after that, you know, and just kind of explaining it and having him understand, like, you know, hey man, no, this is how this works. So yeah, I actually have had it one time, the one time.
we had it not long ago. Had someone pull up, and we were getting food out somewhere. We were coming off a wreck, and we pulled up to Chipotle or whatever, and we're going in because the fire engine doesn't fit through a car drive through. So we go in, and the guy goes, "Well, I'm glad I'm paying for y'all's meal." And at first, I'm thinking he's joking, and I'm like, "Haha, yeah, we buy our own meals and stuff like that." And he goes, "No, I pay your salary," and I'm like, "Well, hold on,
Yeah,
you pay towards the salary,
yeah,
on your taxes, but you don't pay necessarily just for our salary." I said, also, we just got off a wreck for the last 2 hours where there was someone very critically hurt, and we need something to eat, just like you do. I mean, obviously, you're here during your work day to refuel your body. I said, in the same way for us. He goes,
right.
well, shouldn't you be driving your car to do that? I said, okay. I said, I hear you. I said, so let me ask you this. I leave the fire station. I get in my car and I drive. And then you call 911 and no one's there to bring that engine to you. What do you want us to do? And he just dumbfounded, like, oh, and it just clicked. I said, yeah. I
Right.
said, we stay in these apparatuses, because whether we're eating or showering or working out or whatever, if we get a call, we have a very limited time to get out the door. And I don't know how Nashville is, but at Wilson County, we have a minute 30 seconds to get out the door during the day and 2 minutes to get out at night. And you're expected to be out that door.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
well, Jason, if people are wanting to know more about first alarm fire training, where can they find your information at?
Yeah. So right now, the best thing is, of course, on Facebook, the Facebook page, First Alarm Fire Training LLC. I am going to be working on getting a website up and going. That's still in the works. So right now, that is the best place. Got all my contact info on there, and man, I would appreciate all the support. And it's definitely there with some folks. And like I said, we're building this thing. We'll see where it goes. And that's why I wanted to throw out that, those dates again, because I do understand that is toward the tail end of college football, which we all love dearly. We'll be done in plenty of time on that Saturday afternoon for everybody to still catch all the big games. So, yeah, man, that's kind of where it is right now, the Facebook page.
Awesome. And I would love to be at this event, but I'm going to be tied up. That will be one of the days of my wedding. So,
Oh,
so,
gotcha.
so I hate that I'm not going to be able to be there, but
Hey, you're doing way more important stuff.
yeah, I don't think she would like if I miss our wedding day for a training. So, well, Jason, I appreciate you coming on. As always, follow Jason at the First Alarm Fire Training LLC on Facebook. Also follow and like the Fire Bay podcast on all social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Apple, and Spotify. So follow us. And again, this has been an episode of the Fire Bay podcast. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. If you liked what you heard, please like, follow, and share this podcast. Do you have a topic you want us to talk about? Email us at thefirebay@gmail.com.